Today I'm joined with Hayden Locke from Marimaca Copper. Marimaca has a really interesting copper project in southern Chile. Hayden, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So you guys are a copper, we'll say, developer?
Developer, yep.
So let's start talking a little bit about copper. Now, I assume that you're paying attention to the macro and everything that's happening in the copper world. What's your read on the copper market right now?
Well, look, I think there was a short-term squeeze which caused us to hit all-time highs well ahead of the timeline that I was expecting it to occur. And I was saying to my board at the end of last year, look, I think at the end of this year, we're likely to start seeing creeping closer to all-time highs. What actually happened is we got there significantly quicker. But I think that was a little bit artificial. I think we're probably at about the right price now, $4.40, $4.50 a pound of copper. A lot of people making a lot of money. But I think what's really interesting is we're still nowhere near the incentive price to bring most of the new production online. And that is the reason I'm excited about copper in the sort of 5 to 10 year time horizon.
It seems like, and we've been talking about this a lot this week with the copper developers and producers that we've spoken with, it seems like something's going to have to give at some point where the big copper projects that are supposed to go online, like Cobre Panama, and we've seen some other deals sort of fizzle that should have gotten further than they did. It seems like we're going to hit a point where copper prices are going to have to explode just to start to get investment to start flowing in. Do you think that there's a scenario where we could see copper sort of go to show a lot more volatility than it already has?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will be. It's not going to be a straight line, but I think the trend over the next 5 to 10 years is almost certainly higher for the exact reason that you're pointing out. The demand drivers, and in my view, it's infrastructure-led demand for the next 5 to 10 years, where big economies are starting to realise that with the amount of electrical demand that is growing on our networks, the only way that we can possibly achieve the growth in data centres is one example. Data centres use a huge amount of power, but the grids have to be upgraded in order to have that power draw and manage it effectively. And some of the governments are really waking up to that. So China is well ahead, as always, in terms of their investment in the grid. The US is actually pretty progressive and is moving forward in investing in that. But almost none of the other sort of top 10 power consumers in the world have started really investing in their grid. So we see a long-term driver of demand in terms of grid expansion. But the real challenge is the supply side. The supply side has been significantly underinvested, and there is a pipeline of projects, but the CEOs that own those projects want significantly higher copper price before they greenlight them, which has several short-term impacts, not least of which is if we're growing in demand, but these projects aren't being greenlighted, it's going to take several years before the supply response comes. So I see a real risk on the horizon that copper price goes, in Robert Friedland's words, stratospheric.
So let's talk about Marimaca. What's the high-level overview for the company?
So Marimaca is a very unique copper development project. Unique for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're in Chile, but we're in the low coastal range of Chile. We're not in the high Andes. That significantly reduces the execution risk and the capital cost associated with building that project. So what it means is we don't need a large-scale partner to build this project. We can finance it ourselves, we can execute it ourselves, and we can become a copper producer ourselves. In terms of the location, we're much lower on the permitting risk perspective, which means we actually can become a mine. One of the biggest challenges that a lot of these copper projects that could address some of this impending shortfall or deficit in supply is that they can't get permitted. It's a really challenging permitting environment globally these days. We are much lower in terms of permitting risk. And then, it's a really nice project. Based on our economic assessment, it is industry leading in terms of capital cost. It's very competitive in terms of operating cost. And as a result of that combination, we are industry leading in terms of return on invested capital metrics, which again is a reason why this will be a mine in the short term. So we're looking forward to keeping on progressing and hopefully delivering our new copper mine into a market which is really in dire need of new supply.
Now, you guys issued a PEA in 2020 and then sort of said we really shouldn't pay attention to this. What led you guys to not want to really talk about the PEA?
Well, we're not allowed to talk about the PEA anymore because of Canadian listing rules, so it's considered an out-of-date study. We still do refer to it and say, look, it shows that this is among the lowest capital cost projects. The area, the direction of travel remains the same. But I think what's really changed since the PEA is we've doubled the size of the resource. So the project that we will deliver our definitive feasibility study on in the course of this year, at the end of this year, will be based on a mineral resource estimate, which is effectively double the size of what we had in the PEA. So we're targeting 50,000 tonnes a year of production rather than 36,000 tonnes a year of production over a mine life that is more than the 12 years we had in our PEA. So it's going to be a materially different project, much bigger, with all the same unique characteristics still firmly intact.
What's the current timeline look like to release the feasibility study, and what needs to get done in order for that to happen?
So we're aiming to finish the definitive feasibility study at the end of this year. So ideally to be released straight after that, but it's dependent on how quickly we can draft the NI 43-101 documents. So sometime towards the end of the year or early Q1 next year. In terms of the work, well, all of the engineering estimates, capital estimates, but we've actually done quite a lot of the work. So the drilling is already done, the metallurgical testing is already done. So it's really about bringing all those disparate pieces together so we can get a sense of how much it will cost to get into production and then what do the economics look like over the life of mine.
Now, I noticed when I look at your guys' marketing materials, your investor deck website, that you guys really stress ESG. What is it that makes you guys different when it comes to sort of the environmental impact?
Again, the location of Marimaca is such that we have several benefits relative to a lot of our peers. Firstly, it's a much smaller project. It's not a porphyry, so it's in terms of its actual impact on the environment, it's going to be a lot lower. But we've made several decisions in terms of the sustainability. What we call it is building the mine of the future. In order to get permitted, we need to be focused on sustainability. So we are using recycled seawater, which is quite unusual in mining projects. I mean, especially in a water-stressed environment like Chile. So we're using recycled seawater. We will be using 100% certified renewable electricity. So from a carbon intensity perspective, we'll be significantly lower. And our objective is to have a mine that is effectively net zero impact on the surrounding environment. And so that's really driven by making those decisions in terms of using renewable electricity and recycled seawater.
What kind of renewable energy are you able to use?
So the Atacama Desert, the region that we're operating in, is one of the highest solar irradiances in the world. And so it is actually probably the industry leader for solar investment globally. So there's a significant centre for solar generation. There are other renewable sources up there, but there are numerous large-scale solar projects, including molten salt solar projects. It's really the world leader in terms of solar investment.
You guys have Mitsubishi as an investor. What was the process like to get them involved?
Very challenging. Look, they are the preeminent Latin American copper investor. It's quite an unusual investment, and a lot of people have said to me, how on earth did you get Mitsubishi to invest? I think it's a testament to the lack of projects that are available for a company like Mitsubishi, firstly, but also the quality of both our project and the technical work that was done. It took us 18 months to get them from the first meeting to the final investment. Significant amounts of due diligence, as much due diligence as I would expect to buy a company, let alone make a strategic investment like they did. And really, we're very happy with them as a partner because they are incredibly engaged. Yeah, they offer us a lot of additional resources, a different perspective, and a lot of experience in the Chilean copper space.
Last question. If I'm an investor watching, or I'm just watching the story trying to figure out what's going on, what am I looking out for over the remainder of 2024?
So obviously we're progressing the Marimaca oxide deposit towards production, and that is a key driver of value for us as a company. It's the boring but necessary phase that we're in. But we also have an amazing exploration team, and all of the value that's been created in Marimaca thus far has been driven by our exploration team. And so we will see a significant shift back to adding value through the drill bit and through exploration, and there'll be some exciting news coming out in the second half of this year focused on that. We have some amazing projects, which we haven't been talking about primarily because we need to acquire a few more pieces of ground before we let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. But we're very excited about the potential to continue to add value through exploration in the second half of the year.
Well, Hayden, thanks very much for joining us. And hopefully as this project continues to develop, you'll keep coming back on and chatting with us and updating us on the project status.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Hayden.
Thanks.